Hi everyone, I'm Christina from That Canadian Teacher. First, thank you so much for all of your support with my last video on how to use D2L. I'm so happy to hear that it has been helpful to you and that you guys are just rocking the online teaching environment. So this video is for all of you guys. In this video, I'm going to show you some tips and tricks that might help you level up your D2L journey. So go to your course shell, and what we're going to start with is how to reorder. Now, reordering you can definitely do in quizzes, you can do it in discussions, you can do it in different places, but I'm going to show it to you in assignments. This is probably the place where you would use it the most or would get the most use out of it. So if you have a look here, you'll notice that I've labeled things as lesson 1.1, 1.2, and so on. But look over here, lesson 1.7 is out of place. And as you can imagine, this would be super annoying. I want to put it over here so that it comes after 1.6. What you'll find is when you're creating things, D2L will automatically put the most recent thing at the bottom. So sometimes you want the most recent thing to be at the top or maybe reordered in some way. So what you're going to do is you're going to come to more actions and you're going to select reorder. And what will happen is you'll see here on the side sort order, and then you're just going to decide where you want to move it. So I want to have it after 1.6. So I want it to be, looks like it would probably be number 7, and then click save, and that works. So we put it right after number 6. One other thing that I want to show you here in the reorder is you can also even reorder your categories. So you can resort them. Now, I only have the one category listed thus far, but if you had multiple categories, the same principle would apply. So you would have, 1, 2, 3, and let's say you want to make unit 1 be, appear third and your most recent unit to appear at the top. Then you would just change the ordering of this. So this would be then 3 or whatever number it would be the last. The same thing works for discussions. So you would click on more actions, reorder, and then you can reorder it. And that's what I was meaning by you can even sort your main categories. So if I wanted to have, 2.12 to be before 2.5, then I can just reorder this accordingly. Another tip I want to share with you is in class lists. What you're going to have is under class list is you should have all of your students populated. So I'm just going to actually blur out the names of my students, but what you would see is all of your students would be populated in the areas around where my name appears. Because I am the teacher, I also appear in this list. On the far right-hand side, you will actually see a timestamp. This gives you a sense of when the student was last on to D2L. So you can actually have an opportunity to see, has the student logged in? So the last time I've logged in is September 20th, 2020. So this is the day that I'm filming this. And so if you saw, for example, September 6th, then you knew that student hadn't been logging in since September 6th. So on one of your students, what you would do is click this little down arrow, and among this list, you would see Impersonate. So you see you have Impersonate here. If you click that, what it will do is it will make you become your student. So you would see exactly what your student sees. So in those times where, a student might say, I don't have access to this file, you can impersonate yourself as them and then go in and see exactly what the issue is. So sometimes it might be that they're clicking the wrong thing, or maybe you've locked off of certain permissions or anything along those lines. So this allows you the opportunity to pretend to be the student for a moment and see what they're seeing. What will happen is at the top of your screen, you will see this will become an orange icon, and then where it has my name, it actually would say the student's name. So it's exactly like what you would see under the view as student profile. So it would say the student's name here, and you would have to come in and you would have to X out of it to exit out of being that student. Otherwise, you can't do any of the teacher profiles that you have available to you. One thing that I like to tell my students to do is to change their profile. So if you come here to profile, so in the edit my user profile, the student can actually change their picture. It defaults to a shadow head sort of icon that's generic. So this would allow the students to have something that's more unique to their personality. And when you're evaluating in the grader, if you choose to use the grader, it actually allows you to distinguish between the students a little bit easier. Personally, I like to see different icons in there as opposed to just a bunch of grade heads that would populate. And it kind of almost gives you a little bit of their personality since you're not seeing some of the students in person. If you'd like to have grades associated with a particular assignment, what you're going to do is create your new assignment, put in all the information that you want here. And so this information and how to fill this out, I go through this in my other video, and I'll put that up in the iCards. You're going to, of course, put in your categories. I didn't make a category for CPT, so I'm going to add one now. And the score that you want to make it out of. So it's out of 20. Now, this is where you're going to add in your grade items. So I want it to appear in grades so that when I evaluate it, they're going to see it populated up in when they go to the grades section of D2L. So I'm going to add a grade item. So we're going to do numeric. Now, you can also do select box, but you'd have to set up the scheme in advance, and that's done in the grades portion. Numeric, however, is the default. So I'm going to select numeric, and I'm going to give it a title. If you notice, none of the category that I want to appear does not appear, so I'm going to have to actually change that in grades, and I'll show you how I'm going to do that. The maximum points is 20 because it's out of 20. There's no bonus or anything like that. And everything else I'm just going to leave as is. Of course, you can always change the start and end dates, but this just means that the students won't be able to see it until these starts and end dates. You can also add a rubric if you want to add a rubric, but I'm just going to save and close. So there it appears under the category of CPT. So now let me go to grades. When you're in grades, you're going to see along the top the things that you are going to be toggling between. So I'm going to move to manage grades. It defaults to enter grades, but you can actually change that and what you see as the default. Sometimes I like to see manage grades as the default, and you would just change that in your settings over here. So in this first tab of personal display options, if I scroll down, you'll see the start page default grades area. You can decide which one you want to start with. So if I want to start with manage grades, I would save. And then if I close out of this, you're going to see it changes the screen and what it looks like. So this was what it started with. This has all my students' names on it and all their grades and things like that. This is just the overall of what I'm evaluating. Now, if I scroll down, you'll see CPT research notes. That's what I just added as part of the assignment. I attached it to a grade item. Now, if I want to create a category, so you see this is a category here, and these are all of the different evaluations that are underneath that one category. So I'm going to create a new category for this one. So if you select the down arrow and select edit and then scroll to category, I can nestle it under one of the other categories if I want, but in this case, I want to create a new category. So I'm going to call it CPT, and I'm just going to leave these as is. Now, if you do choose to change these, that's up to you, but personally, I'm not dealing with that. Nothing else I need to worry about. So you can play with these display options as well. It defaults to points. So if I wanted to change this, let's say I wanted to have scheme color or something else, you just click on override the display options. So scheme color would say like blue equals 50 to 60, red equals 60 to 70, purple equals 78. You get the picture. And so if you want to have more of a visual of what the different grades look like, you can change that. And the same concept applies for symbol, I believe. So if we have a look back here, you'll see it's now nestled underneath the CPT category. Again, just like with the assignments, if you wanted to reorder this, so let's say I wanted the CPT to appear at the top, you would just go to more actions and reorder it as well. If there was something that you wanted to hide from the users, so let's say, for example, I don't want the students to see propaganda poster assignment, I would just click it and then select hide from user. And you'll notice this little eyeball, that gives you the indication that the students would not see the propaganda poster assignment on their end. If you switch to the enter grades, you're going to see all of your students' names populated here. You can change how it portrays itself. So if you want it to be from last name, last name starting with A to last name starting with Z, you would just play with this. If you wanted to go by first name, you would do this. So Google does things by first name. So if that was something that you wanted to kind of keep consistent, you can just change that if you want. And as you can see here, because I evaluate by the KICA category, so thinking, knowledge, thinking, communication, application, I need to evaluate them separately. So what I've done is I've created individual subcategories to the one assignment. So while in the one assignment, it might be out of 20, but this is worth 10 and this is worth 10. If you were doing things as a total, like for example, the CPT, you could just do the one and it would be out of 20. So when you enter the marks for the student, you would then see the total here. So it would say, 20 out of 20, for example. Now, if you're looking to enter grades, you would just hit the down caret and you would hit enter grades. And then what would happen is you would see all of the students on the left-hand side, and then you can just type in whatever grade you want to provide. You can also give feedback and you can type it in here and it will calculate a percentage out of 20 because my grade is actually out of 20 for this particular one. So you would just, and you can use it just like you would in most markbook systems. You would enter your grade and hit enter and it would go to the next line down. So if you want to set up your grade book, you're going to go to Setup Wizard. To be honest, years ago, I did the Setup Wizard following one of my colleagues' setup, and I just copy that original template ever since. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to show you what I have set up, and if you want to follow this, by all means, feel free to pause the video at the various points and just copy the same information. So on this first page, what it's going to do is give you an overview of how you set up your gradebook. Now, of course, this is going to be personal preference. So for me, this is how I prefer it. If this is not what you prefer, then feel free as you're moving through the setup wizard to just change the different parts. Quite frankly, this might even be the default at this point, but I just kind of follow what I've been using all along to make sure that there's no errors. So in step 1, I calculate it as a point system. So what that means is I would do it as, 18 out of 20, and the grade is out of 20, like the mark is out of 20. If you wanted to do weighted, you could do that if you choose. The next one is I do adjusted final grade. I do automatically release final grade, especially for my e-learn class, but this is a personal preference. I know people that hold off on doing this and then come back into the wizard and check it off, but that's up to you. Personally, it doesn't bother me that they know their grade ahead of time. So in this particular category, I have checked off treat ungraded items as 0. When actually probably the better one might be drop ungraded items. So that means that if the student hasn't handed something in, it's treated as a no mark as opposed to a 0. So again, this is a personal preference. If you want it to be treated as a 0, you may want to check that off. And then automatically keep final grade updated. Again, that's another personal preference that you may want to check off. And then I'm choosing to do the default is going to be percentage. And the number of decimal places to display is 2. And again, this is where you can kind of check off points. If you want to use points, if you want a color scheme, you can put that in here. And you're going to want to display the final grade calculation to users. So I'm leaving this off because in my history class, as I said, I'm not allowing the students to see their final grade in this platform. I'm just going to do it in a slightly different way personally. But if you are calculating their final grade, you would check this off. And then it just gives you a summary of the things that you've chosen. Now in D2L, I submitted a document to show you as an example as part of one of my assignments here. So you'll see this little drop box that shows up with an error message. What that's saying is that this file type is not acceptable. So if you see this, that's what it's referring to. The D2L prefers PDFs. So always try to encourage your students to try to either authorize their account to pull from their Google Drive. And I talked about that in my last video, or have them export it as a PDF if they're using something like Pages or something along those lines. What that will do is it will allow for Turnitin to be able to register it. It doesn't prevent you from seeing the document. So you can see here's the document itself. And now you'll also notice that the real estate that it gives you is actually very small. So if you had a larger screen, certainly it would appear a little bit larger, but I have a 13-inch screen and this is how it's appearing. So very little space for you to work with. Now, if you have a tablet computer, you can actually just like write on the page. So you can highlight and write and things like that. Now, on the right-hand side, you can actually type in your information. You can add a file, you can record it. And if you download the Grader app for iPad, you can actually do all of this in the Grader app. So I'm going to insert video footage from that, and I'll walk you through what that looks like in the Grader app. You're going to select the Grader app, and it's going to require you to log in. So you're just going to need to know your login information, and you will see all your assignments populated. And I just had my 1.2 assignment set up. So I'm just going to go into that, and I will show you that document that I had uploaded. So you see here, that's that document I just showed you. Now there's a couple of things that are available to you for you to annotate this. On the right-hand side, you can provide feedback. Now, I will caution you, if you write feedback into this box and then go back to the document and annotate it, it will erase your feedback. So that is a glitch. So if you're going to leave feedback in that box, just be sure to do it at the very end. There's a scribble tool, a highlight tool, there's an annotation tool, you can underline, and you can do a strike through. Once you finish providing feedback for the student, you're then going to select publish. And what will happen is on the student's side, they will receive a message in their inbox saying that they have received feedback and a grade has been updated. If this was attached to your grades and you had an actual grade, like say out of 20, you would see at the top part the opportunity for you to enter in the grade, but I don't actually have it associated with any marks, so that's why you don't see it here. Now, if you made a mistake and you want to retract it, you would just hit the retract button and it will retract your grade and you can republish it again. So if I had associated a grade with it, I would actually see an empty box somewhere in this area here, and I could type in, 6 out of 20, for example. And then it would then populate to my grade book in D2L. But I didn't actually associate that with this particular assignment simply because I was doing it in two separate categories. But if you do have it as one category, you would see it over here. Once you've provided feedback to the student and you've hit that update button, what will happen is this will appear. This gives them the feedback. So let me go into student mode and I'll show you what it looks like. So I'm in student mode right now. I'm going to go to assignments and I'm going to see that assignment that I just looked at. And you'll see it says red. That's because I just opened it a second ago. But if you hadn't read it, it would, I believe it says unread. So I'm going to open this. And it gives you the overall feedback back. So this is what I had written in that box. And it provides the PDF for them. So let's open that PDF. So these are all those annotations that I made in the Grader app. And if I come down here, that's what the first highlighted note means. And it's hyperlinked as well. So if I click on 1.1, which is linked to this particular spot, it's going to bring me right down to the end notes, and it would say what 1.1 is. So the students can see exactly what annotations you've made to their document. You do have to remind them that this exists. A lot of students just immediately go to this piece here. Obviously, this is not giving them the full picture of what they're receiving their mark for. So you want to make sure that they know to open the attached file or download the attached file so they can see the specific feedback that you've given them. I believe if you had associated grade, it should appear here. So if it was out of 20, you would see 20 out of 20 or whatever grade that you've associated with it. The last trick that I want to show you, or tip I should say, is the chat. Now, this was something that I didn't even know existed until about a week ago. And so I added it to my nav bar. And you'll remember that to add things to your nav bar, you're going to come up to the three little dots here. And so I added that to my nav bar. And what chat does is it allows you to invite students. So if I click on new chat, I'm going to give it a title like, World War I. Now you have two options, personal chat and general chat and personal chat. General chat means that all of the students in your class can respond to it. Personal chat allows you to add students to that particular discussion. So you can say that this discussion on World War I is going to be only for these 5 students. So I'm going to click create. Now you can put description in there if you want. And then it's going to bring me back to that home page. So it's listed here at the bottom. I'm going to click the little down arrow and I'm going to select view members. And it only has the one member, which is myself. Now, if I want to add members, that means other students from my class, I would use this part here. So I'm not going to click this because it's going to populate with my students. But if you were to select this, your student list would populate, and you can then select from that list the students that you want to have in that particular group, and then only they would see what was in that chat. So I'll show you what it looks like on the inside. So when the students enter into the chat, their names will populate on the left-hand side here. If they're not in the chat, their names actually won't appear. So even though they're a member of that chat group, if they're not physically in the space, their name will not appear. And you would just type your message here and it would appear up here. Now, the only downside of this is that once all of the students have exited the chat, the messages erase and they disappear. Now, of course, there's other, you can print it and things like that. But so that's the one downside. So if you are wanting to keep tabs on anything, you'd actually have to physically be in the space in order to see it. And just like with anything, if you want to delete it, just click that down arrow and delete. Hopefully this video was helpful to you and you learned a couple of new tricks to help you on your D2L journey. If you like this video, feel free to subscribe for future videos, or you can give me a follow on my social medias. I'll leave them over here. Best of luck on your journey as a virtual teacher. Bye.